Lauren, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be on the show.
Can I just say, this topic is so needed. It comes up all the time in my conversations. You know, half the time you walk away from feedback conversations thinking, was that actually helpful or do they secretly hate me for it? So if you've ever found yourself avoiding these feedback conversations, or if you want to get better at having them, this one's for you. Let's dive in. All right, Lauren, I want to call something out. I think we all say we want feedback, but the minute it shows up, we can all at times either get defensive, overthink it, or spiral, or think maybe they just hate me territory. Why do you think feedback feels so intense, even when it's something we might have asked for?
The reality is that even if we want to grow, we also want to be accepted. There's an amazing author who's researched and talks about feedback called Sheila Heen. And she basically devised this theory that when it comes to feedback, that awful feeling we always get, even if we get to the good place, comes from the tension between those two desires, to grow and change and to say, yes, Lisa, I love you, don't change. And so when we get feedback from anyone, even if it's well-meaning, even if we're actually pretty okay with it, it's still a suggestion that you might change what you do and who you are. So that's reason one. And reason two is that just in terms of kind of how we process information about ourselves, there's kind of always, anytime you're getting information that's different to what you think, going to be a bit of a psychological process. And researchers have kind of broken it down into 4 stages. So the first is shock or surprise, depending on what the feedback is. Then it's anger, or at least anxiety, that spiral you talked about. Then resistance, like, no, it's not true. And then finally, acceptance. And I think they call it the SARA model. And the beauty of the SARA model, and realizing that this happens anytime you get feedback, is that it sort of normalizes that experience internally for yourself. It also normalizes the experience if you're observing it in someone you've just given feedback to. So instead of expecting that someone's going to like get feedback and just be like, yes, I'm transformed, instead realizing they're going to go through a process, you can start to look for the shock, anxiety, resistance, and acceptance, and even help them through it.
Yeah, I think knowing your own experience with it and that we all go through it can sometimes also be why we hold back from giving feedback, because we don't want to hurt that person. From my experience, I think most people aren't scared of feedback. They're actually really just scared of finding out they're not as good as they hoped.
Yeah, definitely. There's that, sort of desire to be sort of loved and validated and approved for who you are. And it's just that feeling of, oh, maybe, my ideas about myself aren't true. And when I, at my business, the Mentable, we train lots and lots of managers, and most of them hold back from feedback because of their fear about what the other person is going to do or think. And we'll often coach and say, well, what story are you telling yourself about that? Like, what's actually going to happen? And sure, every so often you do get the dramatic crying or anger, but more often than not, you just watch someone go through that kind of 4-stage process.
Of accepting.
Exactly.
One of the things I used to say to managers I would work with was, no one is turning up to work trying to do a shit job. Like, they're not going, hey, let's go to work, it's Wednesday, I'm going to do the shittest job I can possibly do here. Everyone's coming at it with good intentions. So go into the feedback knowing they have good intention.
Yes, exactly. And I think a couple of other things that can be really helpful. So one other reason that feedback can feel just so intense and heavy is this feeling as the giver that you've got to get it right. Like, I'm putting this in bunny ears, and you can even talking to your partner or your roommates at home, like, do you see it? Do you see it? By the time you're like trying to build a case and figure out if you've got it right, it's probably it's too late. You need to have shared the feedback earlier, because no feedback is the truth. Certainly if you're a manager and there's something you expect to see, that's as close to the truth as you can get. But even there, I would coach, you've got to offer it as observations. You don't know the full picture of what's happening. So I think that's another reason, why feedback can feel so intense. And then instead of it's framed as, hey, I have some observations I want to share that could help you be better, or that could help you close a gap that you perceive, or in someone's performance, kind of takes that pressure off. It's like, I'm just trying to share something that I think will help, as opposed to, the word.
This is gospel. I think that's a truth bomb in itself, right? Is that you go, my feedback is fact and nothing else can be happening. And that's when it feels quite aggressive and forced on you.
Yeah, totally. That's where you get the big reactions.
Yeah.
And the other case where you get big reactions, and I think why feedback can feel scary and, sort of emotionally charged, is that people confuse feedback with the other F word, which is feelings. Oftentimes we think we have feedback for someone, but really we have conflict to resolve.
Interesting. Tell me more about that one.
Yeah. So let's say you have a boss, right? So you're not necessarily even the one in charge, but you have a boss and they've been cutting you off in meetings.
Yeah.
And maybe letting someone else speak. And it's kind of built up. And in your head, it's starting to feel like feedback. Yeah, I've got some feedback. I can't handle this anymore. They don't respect me, right? And you're kind of building this case about what they're doing and thinking and, their intent. The reality is that you just have feelings that you need to share. So instead of, I've got some feedback that, you shouldn't cut me off.
Yes.
It's, hey, a couple of times I have felt unheard and like my ideas don't matter as much because you skipped to the next person or didn't call on me.
Yeah.
That's not feedback. That's feelings. And an invitation, if it's done right, to say, what's your perspective? And would you be willing to help me feel more involved?
Nice.
So, yes. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
feels so much more doable.
So much more doable. But sometimes we confuse feedback with feelings, i.e. conflict. And so I think that's another really important thing to suss out. It's like,
how can I figure that out in my head though? Like what can I ask myself or something if I'm trying to work out if it's a feedback thing or a feelings thing?
I feel like I don't have a right to give feedback unless I have this thing is a clear expectation in place.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. If people could only just set expectations clearly, then I've said this before, we wouldn't be having to give feedback or have the hard conversations because we'd done the work up front.
Correct. And I'll also translate because sometimes people are like, expectation. Like, I don't have an expectation of my boss or, a peer. So expectation is like, you could also say commitment.
Yes.
An agreement. And by the way, a commitment could be like values at our company. That is an agreement. It's implied, but it's an agreement.
Shared understanding.
Exactly. So, but I'll use expectations for the purpose of today. So if I have an expectation in place and the person has committed to that and they know it, then yes, then it's typically going to be a feedback conversation because the idea is I'm giving feedback. I'm sharing observations to help you achieve the thing we agreed upon. Now, if it's a situation where it seems like there could be a shared expectation, but I'm actually not sure, then the first thing I do is clarify, are we seeing and committed to the same expectation?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times as a manager, I've thought I was going to go in hot on feedback and, and then it just ends up being a conversation about clarity about the expectation or commitment.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. Yeah, you had no idea. Or yeah, you knew, but you just don't agree with this expectation.
Yes.
And then finally, if I do feel that feeling and like I have something to say, but there's no expectation, that's not in play, then generally it's conflict. I have a feeling that we need to work through.
Yeah. Okay. That's a really great distinction.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that model that you shared earlier. And one of the things I think, makes feedback feel really icky is that you psyched yourself up and you gave the feedback. It maybe landed and then nothing changed. The person kept doing the thing. They kept talking over you in the meeting or they kept not hitting deadlines. And then I think people go, well, what's the point?
Yes. Kind of like the unanswered feedback. Look, that can be really challenging. And the reality is that, some people stay stuck in that process and haven't actually come out to acceptance. So sometimes people get that kind of sort of experience that you've had because the other person just hasn't finished the process and gotten to acceptance.
Yeah.
they're, stewing in anxiety or whatever. And so, especially as a manager, but I think as just a human that wants to help other humans, you can check in and say, hey, like, where are you at? I shared this feedback. Where are you up to? Like, are you still thinking on it? Code for like the anxiety spiral.
Yes.
Do you have any hesitations or any sort of follow-ups that you wanted to work out? The resistance bit. Is there anything I can do to get you to those next steps we talked about? That's that acceptance bit. Okay. So once you know that kind of SARA model, you can basically engage people to suss out where they are and help bring them through.
Is there something in like how often you should be giving people feedback? Because I used to have these challenges where managers would drop truth bombs at a performance review. And then, of course, like emotions escalated, total surprise. Why have you never told me this before? How often should I be giving feedback to someone?
Yeah. So a study a couple of years ago found that most employees want feedback, like 60% of employees want feedback on, I think it's like a weekly basis. And then for people under 30, so Gen Z, it jumped up to 72%. Yeah. So people want feedback. And look, I don't think that
72%.
Yeah.
That's huge.
And look, the thing is, I don't think that people want huge, heavy performance review feedback conversations once a week. That would be insane.
Yeah.
But I think the idea behind it is if you just get observations that can kind of help you improve along the way, then it doesn't become the big F word feedback conversations. It's just, I literally just want input along the way so I do a good job.
Oh, they're almost like nudges. Of that 72% that you said though, like what's the breakdown in terms of like positive reinforcement, keep doing that versus, hey, here's something you need to change now?
I mean, look, at the end of the day, recognition and appreciation is one of the top 3 drivers of performance, retention, low turnover, productivity. I mean, some people, one study of an airline found that recognition and appreciation mattered more than compensation.
Wow.
So yeah, basically the effects of recognition were higher than sort of dollar bonuses.
I totally get that. I've seen like managers go, that was a good prezzo, mate. Anyway, and like, I did some feedback and like, that's not feedback. How do they use that? How do they repeat that? It feels so generic too.
Yes, exactly. So, so I think I'm always a big believer that you should lead with positive feedback. And a study out of Harvard found that ideally, if, sort of a relationship was like a bank account, that you would have 5 deposits of positive feedback in for every withdrawal, like negative. Yeah. And that's not, by the way, the shit sandwich.
They're completely separate things.
We have got to take that off the menu.
Yes.
But that is more a relationship bank, right? Because ultimately, feedback isn't given in the context of a transaction. It's given in the context of a relationship. And so the idea behind positive feedback and recognition and appreciation is you build the goodwill so that when you go to say, hey, I wish you could change something, it's going to be better received. Obviously, if someone's not performing well, then that's going to be a different ratio. But so anyway, so the idea is just on a weekly basis, it's less about I have feedback and more, hey, here's the expectations. Here are some observations for what you can keep doing because you're absolutely killing it. And here's maybe one thing that you could work on, again, to achieve the expectation. And if it's a peer that where, the expectations aren't necessarily as explicit, you can even say at the beginning of the quarter, like, hey, what's one thing we want to work on and what's our most important goal? Can we give each other feedback on this? Because I'd love for us both to win.
Yeah, that open invitation. I also really like what you're saying there around that feedback is actually connected to the relationship. There are so many people who talk about wanting to build more trust into their relationships at work or even just wanting to generally improve the relationship. And feedback can be a great place to start that by opening that conversation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the biggest motivators for me when it comes to tough feedback is imagining what the person would say if I told them the same thing 3 months down the road when it's no longer a situation that can really be fixed. And look, I've done that. I've made that mistake. Yeah. And no one's perfect at feedback. No one will ever be. But that's such a motivator because nothing breaks trust in a relationship than that moment of, how long have I been doing this? Or how long have you been feeling this way?
Yeah.
Than holding back from feedback. And it just usually the kind of problem compounds. So then you're dealing with a tougher situation and broken trust. So
Yeah, I think there's more to add to this as well, in the sense that I remember this one time giving feedback to my boss, and look, maybe I didn't deliver it the best way in the best forum. He called me afterwards and like ripped shreds off me, and to the point where I was crying on the phone. How do you reckon that trust and that relationship was after that? I'm like, well, I can obviously not give you feedback again.
yes.
Well, I could learn some things around the way I delivered it, I'm sure. But this does not feel like a safe relationship where we're going to candidly give each other feedback now.
No. And look, I think that who knows when this happened, but at some point we were sort of given the memo that feelings don't have a place at work.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was crying on the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, feelings are like the OG data point. We basically, as humans, evolved to have feelings. Like the human body doesn't evolve to have much that doesn't serve. So like flight or fight is the OG feelings.
Yeah.
And so the idea is like as a human, you literally cannot stop from feeling.
Yeah.
But when we're told to stuff them down, it kind of can create a culture where people do fly off the handle. Now, look, I'm not saying you should necessarily cry at work meetings, right? That's also you not regulating your feelings. Well, not you in that situation, but just, if you're crying in the middle of a meeting. So I think a lot of negative feedback experiences come from dysregulated adults.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The fear that comes from ever doing it again because you don't know how someone's going to react.
Exactly. And so one of the things that I love teaching is this practice called affect labeling. And I promise I'm going to help former Lisa in a minute with this.
Yes.
But essentially what it is that neuroscientists have found that you can reduce the intensity of an emotion by labeling it. Now, it doesn't really work for situations like being at a coffee shop and like being cranky about being in line because it's obviously that's low stakes. And if you label it like, okay, you're kind of now over dramatizing.
Yes.
But for situations where genuinely you're feeling something really strongly, the idea is it's as simple as labeling specifically what you're feeling. And that basically tells the amygdala to chill out and brings the feelings down. Now, going back to former Lisa, whose boss was turd bucket.
Yeah.
So if you're ever in a situation like that, you've given feedback and now you're sort of getting the wrath, it's okay to say, I can see that you're having a hard reaction to this.
My boss? Oof. That feels like a really intense thing to be able to say.
Yeah, I can see that you're having a hard reaction to this. Look, they might continue to go on, but it can be just enough to trigger that process of forcing them to label the feeling that they're having. Because it's no less intense for them to call you screaming.
Yeah.
And it's a sentence. They might continue to go on screaming, but what it does is triggers that sort of affect labeling moment. I know it's an intense thing, but
I'm
it's a
smiling and
simple
laughing
sentence.
because I'm imagining myself saying it to that person and them just like completely losing their shit more. But for the average person, I feel like it might just like put a pause in the conversation and be like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, exactly. And like if you're a manager and someone's having a hard time like crying or shutting down, it can be just that they need, some people will continue to not, right? But it's oftentimes the thing they need to say, yeah, I'm actually really upset. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, what's a good next step? We don't have to keep going. Why don't we just regroup tomorrow? So yeah, maybe for that one boss. But you never know. It's surprisingly powerful affect labeling.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I didn't want my computer to ding. I totally lost my place.
We went off on a
got
tangent.
so into it. Okay, so I'm going to just pick up now. So I think we can both agree that giving feedback is a skill, but it's also can be this social minefield, especially when you're giving it to a peer or even to your boss, like I was talking about before. You want to be clear, you want to be useful, but the second you open your mouth, there's that voice in your head going, am I being too direct, too soft, too much? What does useful feedback like actually sound like, especially when you're not in charge? That's one of the hardest ones.
Yeah, this is super tough, and there's never gonna be a a time where it feels easy. And I think that that's really important to acknowledge. Giving feedback is ultimately just a really uncomfortable experience. So, because I think there are some people who feel really comfortable giving it, and they're the people that are like sociopathic at work. Like, I love giving feedback. I give it all the time, and everyone's cowering, right?
I wouldn't say I love giving feedback, but I certainly got to a place with my team I used to manage where it was a really comfortable conversation. Well, not comfortable, but it was a more comfortable conversation to have than the norm, because we'd kind of couched it with like the setup, like you were saying. I'm going to tell you things that are really specific, really actionable, and because I want you to succeed.
Yes.
And then it really just flowed from there.
Yeah, I think you can definitely get to that.
Yeah, eventually.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and most likely with a peer or boss, it's probably going to feel more on the end of less comfortable. But there are some things we can do.
Okay.
So the first is make sure that you actually have feedback to give versus conflict to resolve, a feeling to share.
Yeah.
Cool. Now that it's like, okay, yes, feedback. Then identify what the expectation is. And with peer or boss, this can be much more challenging because it's not like you've created a job rec for them.
Yeah.
And with a peer, that's where I like to proactively set some shared agreements, at the start of a quarter or at the start of a project. Even if you haven't done that, it's totally fair to say, hey, I made an assumption. So you can label the expectation by saying, I made an assumption. You can even ask it as a question. Hey, is it fair to assume that we could respond to one another within a business day?
Yeah.
Just working on this project.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome. Something that's been happening is that it's taken you a week to respond to everything. And the impact is that my team has been really on their heels, not able to get the work done on your timeline. That must feel frustrating for you. I'd love to learn more. Here's the impact for the team. So you can sort of kind of create a little space to co-create the expectation and then share the observation.
What happens if you get railroaded? Like I feel like I've been in this situation before, and it was a peer, and they would just go, yeah, well, I'm just really busy. So like that was the sentence.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah, so that's someone just hanging out in resistance.
Yeah. You're like, so take it or leave it. Here I am. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's totally fine at the end of the day, right? Like, this is a relationship. And so it's like, okay, that I can appreciate that. It sounds to me like you're really busy. Let me just be really clear about the impact of that. So, what I'm now going to do is I'm going to change the expectation for me and my team because I'm not getting the information in the right timeline. And I'll come back to you and just let you know how I think this is going to affect the overall timeline.
Sidebar, I really like when people say they're really busy, because then they go, like, my assumption is that they think the other person isn't busy. It's like, I'm busy, Lauren, but you must not be.
I mean, we at the Mentable train managers.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how much of my life is devoted to rescheduling or dealing with people who may be late, may miss the session, have missed the session because they're busy.
They're too busy, but you're not busy. Never use that as an excuse, anyone. That is not an excuse.
So, yeah, as a little detour there, yes.
What about your boss? Like, is there some way you can start that conversation if you're noticing some things, like even if they're not giving you enough feedback, like that's some feedback you need to give too.
Yeah, so I love the boss kind of toolkit. So because the more proactive you are, ultimately the better it's gonna go. So doing the thing where you're like, hey, once a month I'd love to share two-way feedback. Does that sound okay? Even asking them, hey, I'm not your boss. I don't know what matters to you. Each month, can I just ask you where you're most keen to get some feedback? So then it's kind of forcing them to invite you to give feedback on something. They might be shocked, like, let me think about it. But at a minimum, they will come back to you. The reality is, most people do actually want feedback, especially if they know it's coming in advance. So those are two ways that I love to kind of tee myself up.
Scene.
For success. And then also asking for it. So making it really clear, I want two-way feedback and I'm going to be really proactive can help. There are people who just will go their whole lifetime and not be happy to get feedback, right? So I think it's important to keep in mind, but I personally would rather try and know that Because ultimately, it's probably not someone I'm going to stick around with for a long time.
No.
Right. So I know it sucks, but it's like
To just start those conversations. I really like feedback, like even constructive feedback. So if our producer knows this, because I ask her, I'm like, hey, how could that be better all the time? And I can sense people's feedback baggage sometimes when I ask them for feedback. And so one of the questions I really like to ask is like, hey, Lauren, how would you rate how we're working together out of 10? And no one says 10. And then you'd be like, okay, cool. So like what would a 10 look like? And then it opens up. It's almost like they can label it really clearly because they're thinking about the numbers and then they can apply it back to the situation.
Yes. Yeah. It also kind of gets them out of feeling like it's a judgment on you as a person.
Yeah, it objectifies
and
it.
it's more, sort of being like, oh, let me think about this situation. And it forces them to think about expectations, right? Because they're probably like, oh, well, a 10 would mean that we get this many viewers and blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
Right. So that's a brilliant way of getting them to focus on the expectations, even if they're implied.
Totally. And you could use that to start with. And then you could be like, okay, so if that's what a 10 looks like, is it okay if we give each other feedback on these like specific areas?
Exactly.
And then away you go.
Yeah. I really love also asking people to kind of walk in your shoes. So, hey, like if it were you, what would you have done, in this particular situation? Because people love to they can out-inhabit their own selves.
Yeah.
Then they're giving you feedback, but they're talking about it from their own experience.
Yeah.
I love that.
Little conversation starters.
Yeah, exactly. And getting them out of feeling like you're asking them to attack you, even of course that's not what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Lay it on me. Tell me all the things I can't do right now. Like reframe, tell me what could be better.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what are the awkward kind of messy realities of doing feedback well and also being able to stick with it? Because no one tells you this. Like feedback isn't a one-off. It's not like, oh, hey, Lauren, I just gave you feedback and we're done now, so we'll be right for 12 months. I think it's a muscle that you build through repetition. And I think that's why I'm comfortable with it now because I've done it a lot and taught people a lot and so have you. So you can candidly invite it in really and also give it. My feeling is that the goal isn't to make feedback painless. It's more like to make it useful along the way for the person. What do you think is like the best way for people to start sticking with it and kind of build it into the way that they work?
Yeah. So I think one, start with the positives.
Yeah.
So you get that nice feedback loop. And when I say positive feedback, I don't mean great job.
Yes.
I mean, treat positive feedback as you would constructive, like negative feedback. So, in this specific situation, I saw you do XYZ, blah, blah skill, and this was the impact it had. And of course, you can always say thank you. But by sort of practicing that style of positive feedback, it also kind of habituates both people to what quality feedback actually looks and sounds like.
Yeah.
So that's one. And, everyone kind of wins in that particular situation.
Can I say, I have this theory that people are also almost just as uncomfortable getting compliments and positive feedback. Like I personally cringe and try to make a joke out of it and change the subject when someone says something like that. I'm like, okay, anyway, moving on. So just normalizing that as part of the appreciation of working with each other, I think is a good thing.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a good thing because it's really just comment. It's like commenting on you and your actions. Just like, oh my gosh. So it's a great way to start to normalize. Some other things I love is having a feedback section in your one-on-one that you actually use and you hold each other accountable both ways.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, I didn't have feedback for you, but I asked for like feedback as well. Agreeing on like a theme, because the reality is sometimes what can happen is we overload people with too many different things. And so having like a theme, in a quarter or a month that a person wants to work on and just focusing it there. It also creates that nice like invitation, like, hey, is there anything you want to work on this month? I would love to make sure I can really focus my feedback. Obviously, if anything else is blocking you from success, I'm going to share it.
Yeah.
But I really want to supercharge you in a place where you feel like it's aligned with your career growth. For managers out there, this is also what people want when they answer on the engagement survey that you're not developing them.
Yes.
It's literally this.
It's only this, right? With that question that comes up and they go, do I get enough recognition at work? It's like, no, because you're not talking to me about the things I could do better.
Yes, exactly. And so if you're like, I want to help you in your career, what would you like to work on? And I will help you.
Yeah.
You're probably already doing a lot of it. And now you're just getting like the credit.
Yeah.
So that's really helpful. And then like everyone kind of has some version of this, or I think a lot of people do, but especially if I'm a manager, I'll have kind of just like a little Google Doc kind of page where I'll just write observations about my team so that when I get to a one-on-one, I can share them. And on balance, they're mostly positive.
Yeah.
And then also it lets me kind of, if I have an observation, but I don't know how to read it, then I can note it. If it happens again, then I'll say, okay, cool. That's worth now saying something.
Yes.
So I think just having a kind of running log like that can be really helpful. And then, when it comes to kind of peer and upwards feedback, I think just saying, hey, what's something that would be helpful for me to give you feedback on this month? At the end, I'll plan to give it if that sounds okay. And just kind of like getting that invitation, planning it will help it, that kind of messy reality, feel a little bit less bad. And it'll also create a rhythm, right? All of these are meant to be sort of practices that create sort of momentum.
The feedback muscle.
Yeah, that's right. Because otherwise, it's just going to fall like a lead balloon and not be motivating to do
That one time you gave me feedback 12 months ago.
And we're both traumatized.
Yeah, and
exactly.
we're never doing that again.
We're never doing that
We just won't even look at each other in the eye when we walk past each other in the hallway. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Awesome. Okay, so one of the things that we love to do at the end of every episode is share our out, which is one useful thing. So if someone was to walk away from this today and kind of go, okay, I know there's someone I need to give feedback. Like if you asked anyone, who do you need to give feedback to? Everyone could name one person, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully there's positive and also constructive stuff in there.
Yes.
What is one useful thing that someone could do to action it?
A lot of us in feedback conversations, conflict conversations, make the mistake of giving feedback, sharing information before we're really clear on what we want. This plays out in our personal relationships as well. You're all fired up, you come in hot. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, well, what do you want?
Yeah.
And I think also this is a reason why feedback conversations can feel like they stall, right? It's like, this is what happened in the past, but there isn't a lot of clarity on where we go from here.
Yeah.
So I would say, make sure you get your observations specific and measurable and impact driven. But then really think about, well, what happens next? Like, what does good look like? What do you need in the relationship? What do you want to see? And in so doing, force yourself to say, how can I support you? What does it look like for us both to commit to that? How can I check in on you? Because that's ultimately the stuff that makes feedback actually meaningful.
Yes.
That it moves the needle. And I think, if you kind of think about what happens next, it also starts to make the case for, gosh, I would so much rather that than where we are today. So I'd say see into the future. What do you actually want as a positive outcome?
I like that. So before we're even giving feedback now, we're just going to have a career conversation or an expectation conversation and then let it unfold from there.
Exactly.
So Lauren, where can people hear more from you on this? Because I feel like this is one of those things where people go, okay, great. I'm going to psych myself up. I've done the expectation conversation. I want to give feedback. Where can we find you?
Yeah, well, we have some lessons about feedback on the Learna app. So really excited to get the Mentable and Learna collaborating.
Nice. We will link to those in the show notes. Check out Lauren on LinkedIn as well. She shares some great tips on there all the time.